Eddie Hearn exposes Ryan Garcia and George Kambosos Jr. saying that the Zone doesn't care about Haney and it's not the big money fight. And also, Eddie Hearn has stated that George Kambosos says that Eddie Hearn is really not the boss of the Zone, but Eddie Hearn turned around and says, look, if anybody know anything about business in the Zone, I'm the only guy that knows the business. I'm going to break it down for y'all. Let's talk about it in this video. King Jr. got another video for y'all. So we have some interesting boxing news as the CEO of the Zone, Eddie Hearn, states that George Kambosos Jr. and Ryan Garcia has been spreading nothing but lies on that Devin Haney, that the Zone doesn't care about Devin Haney and it's not a big fight. Well, Eddie Hearn debunked all this because Eddie Hearn knows that Devin Haney worked hard to get where he's at, and Eddie Hearn supports, in my opinion, Eddie Hearn is going to do whatever it takes to support Devin and give him the biggest fights as it possibly can be. With that being said, George Kambosos Jr., we heard George Kambosos Jr. and Lou DiBella stated that they had made an offer to Devin Haney and it has been turned down, and they just couldn't come up with the money to give Devin Haney. And Eddie Hearn says that's not the case. Eddie Hearn says that he has contacted Lou DiBella and George Kambosos Jr. team, and they had made an offer. They have already made an offer to George Kambosos Jr. team for a lot of money. And George Kambosos Jr., we heard him on numerous occasions that Devin Haney needs to sell his jewelry because you're going to have to give him the amount of money to pay. And George Kambosos Jr. stated that it's not about the money and it's all about the legacy and belt, because I know Devin Haney is the real undisputed champion. I got to go through him. And George Kambosos Jr. started to be flip-flopping, and he wants money but not legacy. So Eddie Hearn has says that they had made an offer to George Kambosos Jr., agreeing to all the terms and getting Devin Haney, even got the COVID vaccines everywhere, agreed to everything that George Kambosos has did, even agreed to have the fight in Australia within 70,000 people in the arena. And we know Australia is not open up to 100% capacity at the moment because of the COVID ratios are bad out there. But Eddie Hearn basically says that, look, we're trying to give you the most amount of money and we have made an offer, and so we waiting for y'all side to agree. But at the end of the day, I don't think George Kambosos Jr. wants Devin Haney. I think he wants Ryan Garcia because he knows that Devin Haney will embarrass him, and it's a very stylistically bad matchup for George Kambosos Jr. And George Kambosos Jr. and Lou DiBella, they've been running around here making up lies, spreading up lies, saying about Devin Haney. He just turned down the contract. We gave him the money that he offered and stuff like that. He just didn't want to take it. Eddie Hearn says that's not the case. Eddie Hearn called up, contact George Kambosos' team. Look, I gave y'all the biggest amount of money in Australia. I gave y'all the offers. Let's see what y'all gonna do. And I believe George Kambosos Jr. is hesitant to take that offer because he's got a lot to lose. Because once George Kambosos Jr. lose, he's going to be looked at as the same guy as Teofimo Lopez when he lost. Nobody ain't gonna really care about him. Nobody really gonna care about him coming back to the sport or anything like that. Teofimo Lopez got another fight coming up, but nobody really craving Teofimo Lopez. Teofimo Lopez had all the drama because he had all them belts. Nobody ain't gonna know who George Kambosos Jr. is anymore once Devin Haney successfully beats George Kambosos Jr. or if Ryan Garcia decides to, get a fight and a deal done with George Kambosos Jr., which I have. If you guys haven't checked out my previous video, y'all need to go check that out. I broke it down this morning on that fight could potentially be coming to fruition because George Kambosos Jr. is looking for a cherry pick. He's not looking to fight the best of the best. Everybody thought that George Kambosos Jr. is going to go straight to Devin Haney. That's not the case. George Kambosos Jr., the reason why he wants to go to Ryan Garcia because he wants to hold on to those belts one more time, and he wants to have a massive amount of money, and he could potentially get out the sport. That's why I believe if George Kambosos Jr. lose, what's the point of coming back to the sport of boxing when you know you got $8 to $10 million? But George Kambosos Jr., I believe, is going to price himself out. I do not think that he's going to accept the offer that Eddie Hearn has going to give him. And I believe that Lou DiBella also has to come up with the money also to pay Devin Haney as well, because Devin Haney's not going to take less money. So why would Eddie Hearn pay you all this money and give you, but y'all not going to come back with us and give Devin Haney the money that he deserves as a champion, and y'all just wants to play all these lolly-dolly games, and y'all will never get the fight done because the business of boxing. But guys, with that being said, Eddie Hearn says that Dazn has clearly made an offer to George Kambosos Jr. He broke it down beautifully. I can't break it down like he did, but he made an offer to George Kambosos Jr. He talked to George Kambosos Jr. team, including Lou DiBella. They sent them a massive amount of money, and if George Kambosos Jr. don't accept it, he's officially ducking Devin Haney. So Eddie Hearn is willing to do anything to make this fight for George Kambosos Jr. Not for George Kambosos Jr., Devin Haney, but it seems that George Kambosos Jr. is lacking feet. I believe he doesn't want this fight. I believe he wants this Ryan Garcia fight after Ryan Garcia defeats Emmanuel Togo, which he's a bum, in my opinion. And George Kambosos Jr. is going to fight a bum. Nobody knows who he's going to fight. But at the end of the day, we got to see the best fight the best. And George Kambosos Jr., I'm sorry, guys, is dragging his feet. And Eddie Hearn says, look, we gave y'all the offer, so what y'all going to do now? But at the end of the day, it is what it is. Make sure you like, subscribe, and comment. This is your boy King Jr. I'm out of here. Peace.